GS score,
GS score, GS score,
GS score,
GS score,
GS score,
GS score, GS score,
GS score,
GS score, GS score, GS score,
GS score,
GS score,
GS score,
GS score,
GS score.
GS score.
Hello everyone, welcome to GS Score. Today we are going to discuss about our initiative called as Target PT, an ultimate course for the micromanagement of the syllabus. In this session, we are going to discuss some important topics for prelims examination, and based on that we will be discussing some important questions as well. So firstly, we will be discussing about the Wildlife Protection Act. The Wildlife Protection Act 1972, and also we will be referring to the amendments to this particular act in 2022. So this is the most important act that we have in India in order to protect wildlife, and it tries to protect wildlife on the basis of three important actions. So what are those three important actions taken by or taken under the Wildlife Protection Act? First is creation of protected areas. Protected areas are those areas where the activities of human beings will be restricted so that animals would be able to carry out reproductive activities without any disturbance of human beings, right? So we have some important protected areas like national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, in short WLS. Then we have conservation reserves, then we have community reserves, and even tiger reserves. So these are some of the important protected areas that are created under the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, right? Apart from creation of protected areas, it also establishes some important institutions. It also establishes some important institutions in order to protect wildlife. For example, we have institutes like NTCA, National Tiger Conservation Authority, established under this particular act. Then we have National Board for Wildlife, NBWL, National Board for Wildlife. We also have State Board for Wildlife. We have Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, established under this particular act. Then we also have Central Zoo Authority, that is also established under this particular act. And even we can include the Chief Wildlife Warden of the state, which is considered as an administrative head of the protected areas in that particular state. So these institutes also play an important role in the protection of wildlife, right? So that is the second important action taken under the Wildlife Protection Act. Now the third important action under Wildlife Protection Act is creation of schedules. Schedules have been created in the Wildlife Protection Act, and different animals are put inside these schedules based upon the threat perception, based upon the population of those animals. So as per the original Wildlife Protection Act, we had 6 schedules. But with the amendments in 2022, there is rationalization of schedules, and instead of 6 schedules, today we have only 4 schedules, right? So in the previous act, in the original act, 6 schedules were there. Schedule 1 consists of those animals which have higher degree of protection, and any crime against them would be punished with the severe punishment. Then in Schedule 2, we also have higher degree of protection to these animals as well, but higher protection, but little less punishment, right? So the stringent punishment that is seen for the crime against animals in Schedule 1 is not there for Schedule 2 animals. Crimes committed under Schedule 2 animals will be punished, but the punishment will not be as stringent as Schedule 1. Then in Schedule 2 we have animals with lesser degree of protection, right? That means they are generally considered as common animals, and any crime against them would be punished with little less punishment. Same is the case with Schedule 4. Schedule 4 also has lesser punishment than Schedule 3. Animals. So that is first 4 schedules. First 4 schedules are related to the protection of animals that we have in India, and those animals are given different levels of protection because any crime against those animals will be attracting different intensity of the punishment, right? So that varies from Schedule 1 to Schedule 4. For Schedule 1, in case there is any crime against Schedule 1 animals, then the crime would be punished with the stringent punishment. But that is not the case for Schedule 4 animals. Any crime against Schedule 4 animals will attract little less punishment. Then Schedule 5 is an interesting schedule. It is a schedule of vermin. So what are vermin? Vermin are those animals which are considered as pest or nuisance animals. They create a kind of disturbance in the life of human beings by acting as, let's say, pest. They may attack the agricultural crop, or they may also lead to spread of diseases, and that's why they can be killed, they can be hunted. So that schedule 5 is a schedule of vermin, and Schedule 6 consists of list of plants whose cultivation is prohibited. Fine. So these are the 6 schedules as per the original act. But in the amendments we have rationalized these schedules, and now we only have 4 schedules. In Schedule 1 we have animals with higher level of protection. Animals with higher level of protection are there in Schedule 1. Then lower degree of protection is there for animals in Schedule 2. Schedule 3 consists of list of plants. And Schedule 4 consists of animals or species. Instead of saying animals, species listed in the appendices of CITES Convention, CITES, Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, right? So Schedule 5 is a schedule of vermins. Now let us look at a question related to this concept that we have discussed. So in 2024 prelims examination, UPSC asked one question, and the question is, consider the following statements. Statement 1, the Indian flying fox is placed under the vermin category in the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, right? So this statement is a correct statement. Why? Because Indian flying fox are considered as those, let's say, bats which attack or which raid fruit orchards, right? Fruit orchards are raided by these animals, and that's why they are considered as nuisance animals, and hence they are a part of, or they are considered as vermin. But we know that today we have rationalized the schedules. There is no Schedule 5 which consists of vermins. But before this amendment, Indian flying fox was a part of Schedule 5. and today it is a part of Schedule 2. But as per the Wildlife Protection Act 1972 amended in 2022, there is one section which says that a particular animal in Schedule 2 can be put into the category of vermin if it is considered as a nuisance animal, if it is leading to various kinds of losses to, let's say, farmers. That's why we can say that yes, Indian flying fox can be considered as a part of vermin, and that's why statement 1 is a correct statement, right? So statement 1 is correct. Indian flying fox is a vermin species as per the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. First statement is correct. Second, statement 2. The Indian flying fox feeds on the blood of other animals. This statement is an incorrect statement because Indian flying fox, it feeds on fruits and nectar of flowers. It does not eat or it does not feed on the blood of other animals, and that's why second statement is an incorrect statement. Right, so first statement is correct, second is incorrect, and that's why answer of this question is C. Fine. So this question answer is C. Next, now we will discuss about the concept of fuel cell electric vehicles. Fuel cell electric vehicles. Now, first of all, fuel cell electric vehicles. Now, first of all, the electric vehicles that we have today are battery electric vehicles. The electric vehicles that we have today are battery electric vehicles. That means they use stored electricity in batteries. When we charge, we store electricity in batteries, and when the vehicle is running, that stored electricity would be used by these electric vehicles, and that's why they are battery operated electric vehicles. But when we talk about fuel cell based electric vehicles, these fuel cell based electric vehicles will be using hydrogen as a fuel, right? So what are the components of these fuel cell electric vehicles? Components of FCEV, fuel cell electric vehicles. First and the most important component is they use hydrogen, stored hydrogen they use, right? And this hydrogen will be stored at under pressure, right? So compressed form of hydrogen would be used. Compressed form of hydrogen would be used for the operations of FCEVs. So that is one component. Second component is fuel cell. Fuel cell. What is fuel cell? Fuel cell is that device which carries out chemical reaction in order to produce energy, right? It undertakes chemical reaction of hydrogen and oxygen in order to produce electricity. So this fuel cell acts as a platform for the reaction between stored hydrogen and oxygen. Stored hydrogen and oxygen. The stored hydrogen is available in the vehicle itself, and oxygen is taken from air or atmosphere, right? And as this chemical reaction is carried out in fuel cells, it leads to generation of electricity. Right? And this electricity will be stored in the third component called as, or will be feeded to electric motors. It will be feeded to electric motors, and these electric motors will drive the vehicle, and that is how fuel cell electric vehicles work, with the help of hydrogen as a fuel, right? So that is what is the working of fuel cell electric vehicles. But at the same time, it is also important to understand that when this chemical reaction is going on in fuel cells, they not only generate electricity, they also generate steam. They also generate steam or water vapor as an important output, right? One of the byproducts of this particular reaction is steam, right? There is no production of pollutants from these FCEVs, and that's why these FCEVs are considered as environment friendly. They are considered as environment friendly. Fine. So this may be the future. In future, we will be able to use these electric vehicles which are not powered by the electricity stored inside the batteries, but rather they will be powered by fuel cells which will be able to generate their own electricity. Fine. So that is what is FCEV. Now, based on this, one question was asked by UPSC. Let us go through that question. So the question is, which one of the following is the exhaust pipe emission from fuel cell electric vehicles powered by hydrogen? And this question was asked in Prelims 2024, right? So we have already discussed that it does not lead to any kind of pollutant emission, and that's why hydrogen peroxide is not correct. Hydronium is also out of question. Oxygen is also not a exhaust. Exhaust is in the form of water vapor or steam only, and that's why answer of this question is D, water vapor. Next we will discuss about another concept of metaverse. Let us discuss about metaverse. Now, what is metaverse? Metaverse is considered as a parallel universe. A parallel universe often has immersive components, right? That means in order to access this parallel universe, we'll have to use immersive technology, right? And that technology may be in the form of components using technologies like virtual reality, VR, augmented reality, blockchain technology, etc. Right? So it is that parallel universe which will have immersive features, and those immersive features are based on technologies like virtual reality, augmented reality, and blockchain technology, right? And this metaverse will have number of features. It will have number of features. First of all, it will have its own virtual real estate. It will have its own virtual real estate. That means it may have, for example, shopping malls, and those shopping malls will act as a kind of virtual real estate, right? Then it will have digital goods, right? For example, in case of shopping malls, it may have, in case of virtual shopping malls, it may have presence of different, let's say, clothing brands, and those clothing brands will have presence of virtual or digital goods as well. And the shopping of these virtual goods or digital goods is possible with the currency in the form of digital currency. Right? It may also have, let's say, economic assets in the form of NFTs, other economic assets in the form of non-fungible tokens, NFTs, right? Then it also has few other features like interoperability. That means as it is a kind of virtual universe, a parallel universe, it will have various digital assets, it will have various let's say virtual real estates, it may have houses of people, it may have their offices, it may have shopping complexes, and people will be able to move from these digital or these let's say virtual real estates in a seamless manner with the help of their avatars. So interoperability of the metaverse is possible because people will be able to access this metaverse based on their avatars, right? Everyone will be able to create his or her own digital identity called as avatar in this metaverse, and based on this avatar we will be able to access this metaverse, and when we access this metaverse, interoperability will also be seamless. That means we will be able to move from our houses to offices to shopping complex in a seamless manner with the help of these technologies like virtual reality, augmented reality and blockchain technology, etc. Right? So these are some of the important features of metaverse. Metaverse, as it is a kind of parallel universe, it can be accessed by number of let's say people simultaneously. Millions of people will be able to access this metaverse simultaneously, right? The way we interact in our physical world, same kind of interaction we will be able to see in the metaverse, but that interaction would be carried out based on our digital avatars called digital identity called as avatars, right? So that is what is metaverse. Right now metaverse is considered as a idea created by some minds, like let's say the CEO of Facebook named Mark Zuckerberg. But whether it will be existing, it will be coming into existence or not, that is not very clear as of now. And that's why we should not confuse metaverse with the levels of or with the generations of internet. It should not be confused with Web 3.0, right? There are generations of internet like Web 1.0, Web 2.0 and Web 3.0 and so on. But it should not be confused, metaverse should not be confused with these generations. These generations of internet are real, but metaverse right now only is a creation of minds of few people like Mark Zuckerberg. So that is about metaverse. Now let's see the question that UPSC has asked related to metaverse. So this question was asked by UPSC in Prelims 2024. Question is, which one of the following words/phrases is most appropriately used to denote an interoperable network of 3D virtual worlds that can be accessed simultaneously by millions of users who can exert property rights over virtual items? Virtual items can be the digital assets, or it can be virtual real estate as well, right? So that is metaverse. It is not about big data analytics, because big data analytics is what? It is, let's say, analysis of huge volume of data that we have generated in last few years. So that is big data analysis. Cryptography is a technique that is used in order to, let's say, provide safety to the data that is being shared or accessed from internet. And virtual matrix is a kind of matrix which has a limited scope. It may confuse you with metaverse, but virtual matrix is a limited form of metaverse. It cannot be considered as a 3D world in itself, which is the case with metaverse. So answer of this question is C, metaverse. Next we will discuss about the concept of distributed energy resources. Distributed energy resources. Now, in order to understand distributed energy resources, firstly let us try to understand centralized energy resources. Centralized energy resources. Now, what are centralized energy resources? As name suggests, these are those energy resources where energy is produced. Energy is produced in bulk amount in bulk amount at a particular center, and then distributed amongst users. So that is what is centralized energy resources. What are the examples of centralized energy resources? For example, thermal power plants, TPPs, nuclear power plants, hydropower projects. So all these are considered as centralized energy resources. But what is the problem with centralized energy resources? The most important problem is high capital cost. Right? So all these energy resources need huge investment. Why? Because they are producing energy in a huge manner, and that's why initial cost for the equipment, for the infrastructure will be higher. So that is one. Second important problem with respect to these energy resources, centralized energy resources, is that they have huge T&D losses. Transmission and distribution losses are very high. In case of India, it is almost 30% of T&D losses, transmission and distribution losses. You can imagine, out of 100 units of power generated by these units, these energy resources, 30 unit of power is getting wasted. So that is a huge cost on the operations of these centralized energy resources. Moreover, integration of renewable energy is difficult. In case of these centralized energy resources, it is very difficult to integrate renewable energy. And we know that renewable energy use is very important in today's context, given the climate change mitigation initiatives that we want to implement. And that's why this is one of the most important challenge. And added to that, generally these centralized energy resources are considered as emitters of greenhouse gases. Right? For example, especially thermal power plants. Through thermal power plants, huge amount of greenhouse gas emission happens, and that's why due to these problems, due to these challenges that are faced by centralized energy resources, it is important to use distributed energy resources. What are distributed energy resources? As the name suggests, energy generation is carried out in a distributed manner. For example, if there is any iron and steel industry, it may use its own small modular reactors for the production of energy, right? So that is one of the examples. Another example, rooftop solar power generation. This is also an example of distributed energy resources. Why? Because rooftop solar power is generating electricity on its own. It is not attached, it is not generating energy, or it is not getting energy from any grid, any centralized grid which is powered by these kind of energy resources, right? Similarly, we can even consider batteries as distributed energy resources, because what batteries do? Batteries take electricity from, let's say, a centralized energy resource, and they use it in a distributed manner, and that's why it can also be considered as a kind of distributed energy resource. Even fuel cells fuel cells that we have referred to just now are also a kind of distributed energy resource. Why? Because in fuel cells, chemical reactions are carried out in order to produce energy from hydrogen as a fuel. So these are various kinds of distributed energy resources. What are the advantages of these distributed energy resources? The most important advantage is lesser initial cost. Right? Generally, the initial cost of these distributed energy resources is less. Similarly, easier integration of renewable energy. Easier integration of renewable energy is possible. Less losses, right? It reduces dependency on central grid or main grid. That is also an important advantage of these distributed energy resources, right? So now let us look at the question that UPSC has asked on these distributed energy resources. So question is, consider the following. This question was asked by UPSC in Prelims 2024. So question is, how many of the above are considered distributed energy resources? So battery storage, as we have already discussed, biomass generators are also distributed energy resources. Why? Because biomass, it can be a biomass coming from, let's say, agricultural field. So that can be used with the help of, that can be used and can be converted into energy with the help of various processes like pyrolysis, right? So that is also considered as distributed energy resource. Then fuel cells are distributed energy resource. Rooftop solar photovoltaic units that convert solar energy into electric energy are also distributed energy resources. So answer of this question is all 4. So that is about our discussion of these important concepts related to the prelims examination from the subject science and technology and environment. So that is about our discussion under this target PT program. Thank you.